Ethan Cole was not supposed to be flying that day. His ship was still half-tested, its system still blinking with error codes he had promised himself to fix later. But the urge to see the uncharted system just a few jumps away was too strong. He had spent months patrolling dull sectors, staring at empty space. When his scanners showed a faint distortion near a star system no one had ever charted, curiosity pulled him forward like a hook through his chest. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, eyes on the streaking stars, and grinned. Just a quick look, he muttered. Then back home. The distortion appeared like ripples in a pond. His ship jolted, alarm screaming. Ethan's smile vanished. The console flared red with warnings. Gravity surge, stabilizers failing, thrusters overloading. He gripped the controls, but the ship bucked like a wild beast. "Come on, hold together," he shouted. Sparks leapt from the control panel. The forward screen filled with light, then darkness, then light again. The ship spun. He lost track of which way was up. His stomach churned as if the universe had twisted inside out. Then, just as suddenly, the ride ended. The craft burst through clouds, plunging downward. Ethan's eyes widened. Beneath him stretched a vast alien ocean, gleaming silver under twin suns. Rising from the water was a colossal city, its towers spiraling like carved crystals, its streets arranged in perfect circles around a central platform. Ethan barely had time to scream before the ship slammed. Into that platform, metal shrieked, glass shattered, and the hull scraped along polished stone until the vessel finally ground to a stop. Silence followed. Ethan sat stunned, smoke filling the cockpit. His head throbbed, but he was alive. He unbuckled, coughing, and kicked the emergency hatch. With a groan of tortured metal, it opened. He crawled out into blinding light. The first thing he noticed was the silence of thousands. He staggered upright. A vast crowd surrounded him. They filled the circular platform, their robes flowing like rivers of color: emerald, violet, gold. Tall beings with long, ridged faces and bright gemstone eyes stared at him. Some had silver crests along their heads, others bore elaborate ornaments. They all looked both stunned and expectant. Ethan's mouth went dry. Hi?" The silence broke like glass. The crowd erupted, not in screams of anger, but in wild cheers. Voices rose together, echoing through the crystalline city. Drums thundered, horns blared. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "What the hell?" he whispered. From the front of the crowd, several figures stepped forward. They wore robes heavier than the rest, lined with gold and draped with jewels. Clearly leaders of some kind. One of them raised a staff carved from glowing stone and pointed it toward Ethan. "The groom has arrived," the figure proclaimed, his voice booming across the plaza. The crowd roared louder. Ethan felt his knees weaken. "Groom?" He lifted his hands quickly. "Wait, no, mistake, I just crashed." Nobody seemed to hear him. They surged forward, not in hostility, but in reverence. Several robed attendants rushed to his side. Before he could back away, they gently but firmly grabbed his arms. They lifted him up as if he were some kind of honored guest. Ethan tried to resist, but his legs wobbled. His ship smoked behind him, useless. His options were gone. They carried him through a grand archway into the towering palace that overlooked the platform. The interior glowed with living light, walls covered in shifting colors like liquid crystal. Alien symbols stretched in spirals along the walls. Ethan tried again. "Listen, I don't know what's going on. I'm not your groom or whatever. I'm just a pilot, okay?" "Wrong guy." The attendants ignored him, though they smiled politely as if they didn't understand his words. Soon one activated a small device that pulsed with energy. A mechanical hum filled the air. Suddenly, Ethan heard their voices in his own language. "Be calm, Sky-Fallen One," one said. "The prophecy has spoken." Ethan gaped. "Prophecy? What prophecy?" Another attendant gestured gracefully. "The one that has guided our people for centuries. The princess's mate shall fall from the heavens in fire on the day of binding." Ethan's eyes darted around. "Binding? Wait, you mean a wedding?" They nodded solemnly. He nearly fainted. Before he could argue further, they swept him into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched so high it seemed to touch the sky. At the far end stood a dais of crystal upon which sat a throne. And on that throne was someone who made Ethan's breath catch. The princess. She was unlike the others. Tall, regal, her silver-blue skin shimmering faintly, her hair like flowing starlight. Her gemstone eyes were a deep violet that seemed to see through him. She wore a ceremonial gown woven with threads of light itself. For a long moment, she studied him with an expression of curiosity and disbelief. Then she rose and descended the steps. The crowd inside bowed low. Ethan swallowed hard. The princess stopped before him. She tilted her head. Her voice, when she spoke, carried both grace and steel. "So, this is the one my people call my groom." Ethan's hands shook. "No, I mean hi, I'm Ethan, pilot. Not a groom. Definitely not a groom." A flicker of amusement touched her lips. "Strange. You arrived in fire, as the prophecy said. You interrupted our ceremony exactly at the appointed hour, and now all believe destiny has chosen you." "Yeah, well, destiny's got bad aim," Ethan muttered. She studied him longer. Then quietly she said, "I am Lyara, daughter of the Zareth throne, and you, human, have just stepped into the middle of a wedding that decides the fate of my people." Ethan wanted to collapse into the floor. The attendants bowed deeply. "Princess Lyara, the binding must proceed. The groom has arrived as foretold." Lyara's gaze lingered on Ethan. Something unreadable passed through her eyes. She finally turned and walked back toward her throne. "We shall see," she said softly. Ethan stood frozen as the attendants pulled him deeper into the palace, preparing him for something he had never signed up for. His ship smoldered on the platform outside, forgotten by everyone but him, and in the back of his mind, one thought kept repeating. He had just crashed into an alien wedding, and somehow, they thought he was the groom. Ethan Cole had never been more confused in his life. He was led through the glowing halls of the alien palace by attendants who bowed and murmured prayers whenever they glanced at him. His mind spun in circles. A few hours ago, he had been piloting a small exploration ship, humming a tune to himself, thinking only about what snacks he had left in storage. Now he was walking in the middle of a procession of tall, jewel-eyed beings who believed he was part of some ancient prophecy. They moved, quickly, as though the entire city was waiting. Ethan tried again to explain, even though the translator device made his words stumble. "Look, I don't know how you people do weddings, but I'm not the guy you want. I'm human. I'm from Earth. I don't even know your customs or your food or your bathroom system." The attendants only smiled and lowered their heads respectfully, which only made him feel more trapped. They brought him into a chamber filled with shimmering fabrics, glowing pools, and carved mirrors of crystal. It looked like a dressing hall. Several aliens, all wearing robes of white, began circling him like tailors. They measured his shoulders with strips of glowing thread, clucked their tongues at his ripped flight suit, and whispered about how the groom needed to appear worthy of their princess. Ethan raised his hands helplessly. "Hold on, this is a mistake. I didn't mean to crash into your whatever this is." One of them, an elder with golden markings on her skin, shook her head gently. "There are no mistakes the prophecy has chosen," Ethan groaned. "Oh, come on. Prophecies always sound nice until you're the guy stuck in one." But they didn't listen. They pulled away his charred pilot jacket and handed him a ceremonial garment. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Layers of cloth that shimmered, like moonlight, stitched with tiny crystals that pulsed faintly with light. They wrapped it around him carefully, placing a crest of silver metal on his chest. When they finished, Ethan hardly recognized himself. He looked in the mirror and saw a man who seemed like some royal knight out of an old story. His brown hair was messy, his face had smudges of soot from the crash, but the robes made him look important. He didn't like that. "Great," he muttered. "Now I look like the idiot star of the play. Perfect." The attendant stepped back and bowed. "You are ready," one said. "Ready for what?" Ethan asked nervously. ready to stand beside the princess, ready to bind the future of our people. His stomach sank. Before he could protest, the doors opened and guards entered, tall and armored in plates that glowed faintly with energy. They carried weapons that looked like long staffs but crackled with hidden power. They didn't grab him or threaten him, but their presence made it clear he was not free to walk away. The guards escorted him into another hall, larger than the last, filled with hundreds of aliens. Music played from strange instruments that hummed like voices from another world. The walls were alive with light, glowing softly as if the palace itself was awake. At the center of the hall was Princess Liara. She stood at the far end, radiant in her shimmering gown, a crown of crystal upon her brow. Her violet eyes locked on Ethan the moment he entered. The crowd fell silent. Ethan's feet felt like lead as he walked forward. Every step echoed. He wanted to run back to his broken ship and blast off into space, but there was nowhere to run. When he reached the center, Liara spoke in a calm voice that carried through the chamber. "This is the one who fell from the sky, the one the prophecy named." The people cheered. Ethan lifted his hands desperately. "Wait, stop, listen. This is all a big misunderstanding. I'm not here for a wedding. I'm not here for any prophecy. I just crashed." The translator buzzed, echoing his words in their language. The hall grew quiet again. Many eyes blinked at him in confusion, some in doubt. Liara raised her hand and silenced them. She turned her gaze back to Ethan. "You are not here for prophecy? Then why did you come?" Ethan rubbed his face. "Because my ship malfunctioned. Because I'm an idiot who didn't run a full check before flying. I didn't even know your planet was here." The hall rippled with murmurs. Some looked worried. Others whispered about omens and destiny. Liara studied him, her eyes sharp but thoughtful. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she smiled faintly. "Perhaps fate has a sense of humor." Ethan blinked. "I'm glad one of us is laughing, eh?" Crowd chuckled softly, though Ethan wasn't sure if they were laughing with him or at him. Liara stepped closer, her voice lowering so that only he could hear. "Do not think I am blind to truth, human. I know you are not the prince they promised. I know you stumbled here by accident. But my people, they cannot accept that. They believe too deeply. If I defy them, if I call this a lie, the city will fall into chaos. They will turn on each other. War may even begin." Ethan swallowed hard. "So what do you want me to do?" Her gaze was steady. "For now you must play the part." "Play the part?" he whispered harshly. "You want me to marry you?" Liara tilted her head. "Do you find me so unworthy?" Ethan's face burned. No, you're beautiful. More than beautiful. It's just, I didn't exactly wake up this morning planning to marry an alien princess." Liara's faint smile returned. "Then perhaps it is destiny after all." The crowd began chanting again, pressing for the ceremony to proceed. Ethan felt trapped in a storm. He wanted to shout, to demand they take him back to his ship, to insist that none of this was real. But when he looked into Liara's eyes, he saw something else. She wasn't mocking him. She wasn't blindly following the prophecy. She was asking him for help. Ethan sighed. His life had gone insane, but he had never been the kind of man to walk away when someone needed him. "All right," he muttered. "I'll play along, but only until I figure out how to fix this." Liara gave him a slow nod, as though she had expected that answer. "Good. Then let us stand together." The attendants guided them toward the dice. The crowd grew louder, chanting, clapping, stamping their feet in rhythm. The entire hall shook with energy. As they stood side by side, Ethan glanced at Liara again. She held her chin high, her presence commanding, but he could see the worry hidden behind her calm. She was a leader caught in a trap, just like him. The elder priest stepped forward, lifting his glowing staff. He began to chant in deep tones, calling upon the stars, the oceans, the endless sky. Ethan couldn't understand all of it, but the translator whispered fragments. Binding of fate, union of the bloodline, fire of the heavens. Ethan's head spun. He thought of Earth, of home, of his ship lying broken outside. He thought of his friends who would never believe him if he told them. He thought of Liara, standing tall beside him, her hand brushing close to his. Maybe this was just a performance. Maybe it was a mistake. But in that moment, with the alien crowd roaring and the palace glowing like the heart of a star, Ethan realized something. He was no longer just a lost pilot. Whether he liked it or not, he had become part of something far bigger, and destiny, whether real or not, had just put him in the role of a lifetime. Ethan Cole had faced strange things before in his life, but nothing compared to this. He had once been stuck inside a drifting cargo hauler with no food except protein bars for 2 weeks. He had once fought off a swarm of tiny space parasites that chewed through wiring faster than a repair bot. But pretending to be the groom in an alien wedding? That was beyond anything he had imagined. The palace halls were alive with preparation. After the priest's first words of blessing, the attendants rushed Ethan and Princess Liara away to begin the endless traditions of the ceremony. The city outside buzzed like a giant hive. Alien citizens filled the wide platforms, decorating them with ribbons of glowing fabric and crystal lanterns that hovered in the air. Songs echoed through the spiraling towers, voices weaving together in haunting harmony. Ethan followed the attendants through one corridor after another, his head spinning. Every time he asked, "Are you sure about this?" Or, "Can't we stop and explain the truth?" They only bowed and replied, "The prophecy allows no delay." He was dressed now in full ceremonial armor. It wasn't heavy like human armor, but smooth, flowing plates of silver and white that glowed faintly with their own light. A crest shaped like a starburst rested on his chest, and a long cape trailed behind him. Ethan hated capes, but the attendants acted as if the fabric itself held divine power. Beside him, Liara walked with calm grace. She moved like someone born to stand before crowds, yet when her eyes slid toward Ethan, he saw the same unease he felt. They were both caught in something larger than either of them could control. At one point, when the attendants were busy adjusting Ethan's cape for the 10th time, Liara leaned closer and whispered, "You do not look comfortable." Ethan whispered back, "That's because I'm not comfortable. This isn't my life. I'm not this." He gestured at the armor. "I'm just a guy with a half-broken ship." Liara's lips curved slightly. "Yet my people believe you are chosen." "Yeah, well, your people need better aim with their prophecies," Ethan muttered. She gave the smallest laugh, soft and quick, before her expression returned to calm. Ethan caught it, though, and for a moment he felt less alone. The first ritual took place in a chamber filled with flowing water that streamed from the walls and collected into pools shaped like stars. The priest explained that the groom and bride must dip their hands into the sacred water and let the light of the stars reflect from the surface, binding their souls to destiny. Ethan stared at the pool nervously. The water shimmered as though it held galaxies inside. Liara dipped her hand gracefully. Ethan followed awkwardly, his fingers trembling. When his skin touched the water, the pool flared with sudden brightness. Gasps filled the chamber. Ethan yanked his hand back. "I didn't break it, did I?" The priest's voice thundered with joy. "It is a sign. The prophecy burns brighter than ever." The attendants cheered. Liara only looked at Ethan with narrowed eyes, as though she too was beginning to wonder if fate had truly sent him. Next came the feast hall. Long tables stretched across a glittering room, filled with dishes Ethan couldn't even name. Some shimmered like molten glass, others pulsed like living flowers. The guests watched as Ethan was urged to taste the food beside Liara. He picked up a small glowing fruit and bit into it. It burst in his mouth with sweetness so strong he almost coughed. "Whoa. Okay. That's not bad." The crowd clapped as if he had performed magic. Liara raised a brow. "You please them easily. Guess I'm good at eating," Ethan muttered. But while the rituals seemed harmless, Ethan could not ignore the feeling of tension in the air. The guards in the palace moved with more urgency than before. He noticed groups of officials whispering in corners, casting worried glances toward the sky outside the open windows. During a quiet moment, Ethan leaned toward Liara. "What's going on? Why do they all look so nervous?" Liara's eyes darkened. "Not all wish for this wedding. My people are divided. Some see union as a way to strengthen our future. Others see it as weakness. There are enemies." Ethan's chest tightened. "Enemies? You mean they'd actually attack a wedding?" Her gaze locked on his. "They might. And if they do, everything will collapse." Ethan rubbed his face. "Great. So I get to be a fake groom in a fake wedding, and now we might also get killed? Perfect." But he saw the seriousness in her expression. She wasn't exaggerating. Something was coming. The final preparation before the binding ceremony was held in the great open plaza, the same place Ethan had first crashed into. Now it was decorated with banners and glowing crystals. Thousands of citizens gathered, cheering, as the princess and her groom appeared. Ethan tried to smile weakly, but his stomach churned. The priest raised his staff and began to call upon the stars once more. The crowd swayed and sang in response. Liara stood tall beside Ethan, her hand resting lightly near his. Ethan glanced at her, seeing the strength in her posture, the calm in her face. She was doing this for her people, for peace. Even if she didn't believe in the prophecy, she believed in them. Ethan straightened his back. For once, he stopped complaining. Maybe he couldn't fix this with words. Maybe he just had to stand here and be what they needed, at least until it was safe to leave. But before the priest could finish his chant, a terrible sound tore through the air. It was a horn, deep and harsh, echoing from beyond the city walls. The crowd gasped. Guards snapped to attention. In the distance, through the glowing towers, Ethan saw black shapes rising into the sky. Ships, dozens of them, sleek and armed, bearing the sigil of a rival faction. Liara's eyes hardened. They have come. The ships swooped closer and beams of energy lanced toward the city. Explosions shook the crystal towers. Panic spread through the plaza as citizens screamed and scattered. Guards rushed to defend the palace. Ethan froze. For a heartbeat, his human mind screaming at him to run. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a hero. He was just a pilot who had crashed in the wrong place. But when he saw Liara standing firm, refusing to flee, something inside him shifted. He couldn't let her face this alone. A blast struck near the plaza, throwing debris into the air. A guard was knocked aside, his weapon clattering across the ground. Ethan ran without thinking, grabbed the fallen weapon and nearly dropped it from the weight. It was heavier than it looked, humming with strange energy. "Ethan!" Liara shouted. He looked at her, fear in his eyes. "I don't know what I'm doing," she called back. "Then fight as you are." The attackers landed on the edge of the plaza, warriors clad in dark armor, their faces hidden behind jagged masks. They surged forward, blades of energy flashing. The palace guards met them with shields and spears of light. The clash rang out across the city. Ethan's heart pounded. One of the armored attackers charged straight at him, raising a weapon. Ethan yelped, aimed the heavy staff he held, and pressed the trigger. A beam of blazing light shot forth, striking the attacker and hurling him backward. Ethan stared at the smoking crater. Whoa! He barely had time to breathe before another enemy came at him. He stumbled back, swung the weapon wildly, and fired again. The shot went wide, blasting a chunk out of the plaza wall, but it scared the enemy enough to retreat. Liara was suddenly beside him, wielding a blade of pure crystal. Light. She moved with precision and grace, striking down an enemy with a single slash. Ethan could only gape. "You're incredible," he shouted. She replied calmly, "Keep fighting, human." Together they stood against the rush of attackers. Ethan fired clumsily but with growing courage, while Liara struck with elegance and fury. Around them the guards rallied, inspired by the sight of their princess and the strange groom standing side by side. At last, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the attackers began to retreat. Their ships lifted off, vanishing back into the sky. The plaza was scarred with smoke and fire, but the palace still stood. The crowd, shaken but alive, slowly began to cheer. The prophecy had spoken louder than ever. The groom had fought to defend the princess. Ethan stood panting, the heavy weapon trembling in his hands. He had never felt so exhausted, so scared, and yet so alive. Liara stepped beside him, her violet eyes studying him closely. "Perhaps you are not as false as you believe." Ethan tried to laugh, but it came out weak. "Don't start. I'm still just a guy who crashed." But deep inside he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was becoming something more. The plaza still smoked from the attack. Shattered crystal lay scattered across the ground, glowing faintly in the fading sunlight. Guards rushed to secure the wounded while attendants helped frightened citizens to safety. The sounds of cries, clashing armor, and flickering flames filled the air. Ethan Cole stood in the middle of it all, clutching the alien weapon like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His chest heaved, sweat ran down his face, and his arms trembled from the fight. He had no idea how he had managed to survive. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a warrior, and yet somehow he had stood beside Princess Liara and fought back the invaders. He looked at her now. She was calm, her posture straight, her blade still glowing faintly in her hand. Her gown was torn in places, her crown tilted slightly, but she carried herself as if she had not been touched by fear. Only her eyes betrayed the truth. They held a sharp, burning fire, the kind of fire that came when someone saw their world threatened. She turned to him, her voice steady. "You did not run." Ethan gave a weak laugh. "Trust me, I wanted to. Running is kind of my specialty, but you didn't run either, and if you're going to stand and fight, then I guess I can't look like a coward next to you." Her lips curved slightly just for a second. "Perhaps fate does guide you, human." Ethan shook his head quickly. No, don't start with the prophecy again. I just got lucky. And maybe desperate." But even as he said it, the crowd around them began to chant his name. Or rather, the word they had chosen for him. The translation device whispered the meaning into his ear. Skyfallen groom. The chant rose higher and higher, echoing off the broken towers. Ethan felt his stomach twist. These people were treating him like a hero, like the prophecy had been fulfilled. But he knew the truth. He was just a lost pilot who happened to crash at the right time. If they knew that, would their hope vanish? The priest approached, his golden staff glowing. "The signs are clear. The groom has defended the princess. The bond of destiny is stronger than ever." The crowd roared in agreement. Liara gave a careful nod, but her eyes remained on Ethan, watching him closely. Guards escorted them back into the palace as the city began to recover. Along the way, alien citizens reached out to touch Ethan's arm, to bow before him, to whisper blessings. He felt like he was walking through a dream, one he could not wake from. Inside the palace, the tension shifted. The council of elders gathered, their jeweled robes glittering under the light of the crystal lamps. They bowed low to Liara, then turned to Ethan with deep reverence. "The attack was meant to destroy us," one elder said. "But the prophecy shielded our people. The groom has proven himself." Ethan raised his hands. "Look, I didn't prove anything. I just fired a weapon. Badly, I might add. I nearly blasted a hole in your wall instead of the enemy." The elders only nodded more deeply. "Humility, a true sign of worthiness." Ethan groaned. "That's not humility. That's me telling you I almost died." Liara stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "Enough. The city must focus on defense. Our enemies will not stop with one attack. They will strike again." The elders bowed. "Yes, princess." She turned to Ethan, her expression softening slightly. "You need rest. The battle has drained you." Ethan wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him. His legs wobbled, his arms shook, and exhaustion pressed down like a heavy blanket. He gave a tired nod. "Fine. Rest. But when I wake up, we're going to talk about a plan, because I can't keep pretending I'm something I'm not." Liara studied him for a moment, then inclined her head. Very well, we will talk. Attendants led Ethan to a chamber high in the palace. It was grand, filled with flowing curtains and glowing crystal pillars. But he barely noticed. He collapsed onto the soft bed and let the darkness take him. When he awoke, the city outside was quieter. The fires had been put out, the smoke had faded, but the scars remained. From the balcony of his chamber, Ethan could see towers blackened. By blasts, platforms cracked and bent. He could also see the people working together, repairing, singing, raising banners of hope. For a long moment, he simply watched. These aliens, the Zareth, weren't so different from humans after all. They feared, they hoped, they fought to protect what they loved. And now they had placed their hope on him. A knock came at the door. Liara entered, dressed in simpler clothes now, her crown set aside. Without the ceremonial gown, she looked less like a distant princess and more like a woman carrying heavy responsibility. You slept long, she said. Yeah, Ethan admitted, rubbing his eyes. Guess fighting for your life takes it out of you. She walked to the balcony, gazing out at the city. They believe in you now. Ethan joined her, leaning on the railing. That's the problem. I don't deserve it. I'm not their hero. I'm not your groom. I'm just Ethan, a human who made a very bad landing. Liara's violet eyes turned to him. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps you are not what the prophecy meant. But they believe, and belief can be stronger than truth. You gave them hope when they might have fallen into despair. That matters more than who you are. Ethan sighed. Hope is good. But what happens when they realize I'm a fake? Won't that break them worse? She was silent for a moment. Then she said, That depends on you. Will you remain a fake or become something real? Her words struck him harder than he expected. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, even when flying through the stars. But now someone was asking him to be more. Before he could answer, a guard rushed into the chamber, bowing deeply. Princess, scouts report enemy ships gathering beyond the ocean. They are preparing another assault. Liara's jaw tightened. So soon. The guard continued. They mean to stop the wedding before it can be completed. They claim your union will doom them all. Ethan groaned. Of course they do. Why can't anyone just send a wedding gift like normal people? Liara ignored his sarcasm. She turned to him, her voice firm. We cannot delay any longer. The ceremony must be finished. If it is not, our enemies will use the doubt to break us apart. The people need this union. Ethan's heart pounded. Liara, this is insane. You're talking about actually going through with this. With me. A stranger who doesn't even belong here. Her gaze held his. And yet you fought beside me when others would have fled. You stood when you could have run. That is worth more than bloodlines or prophecies. He swallowed hard. You really believe that? I believe, she said quietly, that sometimes destiny chooses the unexpected path. The guard waited silently, eyes lowered. The weight of the decision pressed down on Ethan's chest. He wanted to scream that this wasn't fair, that he didn't ask for this, that he wasn't ready. But when he looked out at the city again, saw the scars of battle, saw the people rebuilding and singing because they believed in him, he felt something shift. Maybe he couldn't be their groom, but he could be their shield. He turned back to Liara and gave a shaky smile. All right, princess. If finishing this wedding keeps your people safe, then I'll stand with you. Just don't expect me to be good at the dancing part. For the first time, Liara laughed openly, a sound soft and bright. Then I shall guide your steps. The guard bowed deeply and left to prepare. As the sun set, painting the sky in gold and violet, the palace came alive again. The plaza was repaired enough for the ceremony to resume. Citizens gathered in even greater numbers, their voices rising like a storm of hope. The guards stood ready, watching the horizon for the next attack. Ethan stood beside Liara once more. The weight of the armor pressing on his shoulders, the weight of the people pressing on his heart. The priest raised his staff, beginning the final chant. This time, Ethan did not fidget or mutter complaints. He stood tall. He wasn't sure if he believed in destiny, but he believed in the choice he was making now, the choice to fight, the choice to protect, the choice to stand beside someone who believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. And as the stars shone down on the city, Ethan Cole realized that no matter how this ended, he was no longer just a pilot who had crashed. He was part of something bigger. The plaza had been repaired, its crystal walkways gleaming under the twin suns. The citizens of the Zareth gathered, their voices rising in chants that echoed across the city. Banners fluttered in the wind, and lanterns hovered like tiny stars above the crowd. The tension from the earlier attack lingered, but the people had hope again. They had survived once, and now they believed the union of their princess and the sky-fallen groom would secure their future. Ethan Cole adjusted the ceremonial armor on his shoulders, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on him. He had never imagined he would be here, standing beside an alien princess about to complete a wedding that would bind an entire people together. His hands shook slightly, partly from exhaustion, partly from the strange mix of fear and responsibility coursing through him. Liara approached him, her violet eyes calm but focused. She held a ceremonial blade that glowed faintly, a symbol of her authority and the bond she was about to form. Ethan looked at her, trying to steady his nerves. "You ready?" she asked quietly. Ethan swallowed. "I guess as ready as I'll ever be. Just don't expect me to say the right words." She tilted her head slightly, a hint of amusement in her gaze. "You only need to stand with me." The priest raised his staff, the glowing crystal at its tip casting shifting lights across the plaza. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying the tension like a tangible force. The ceremony began, slow and deliberate. Ethan and Liara stepped forward together, their hands brushing, their hearts pounding in sync. The ritual required them to place their hands on a crystal altar that pulsed with light. As they did, beams shot upward, connecting them to the energy flowing through the city. Ethan's hand was trembling, but he looked at Liara and saw the strength in her posture. She had faced enemies, she had faced prophecy, and she had chosen to stand beside him. If she could do that, he could find the courage to follow. The priest's voice echoed across the plaza. "By the stars, by the oceans, by the endless sky, we bind these souls in union. Let the light of destiny shine through." The courage of the chosen. As the chant rose, Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. It was strange, alien, but also grounding. He realized that he wasn't just performing a ceremony. He was part of something alive, something bigger than himself. Then, from the horizon, a shadow darkened the plaza. Ethan's heart sank. The second attack had arrived. Enemy ships descended like birds of prey, sleek and dark, weapons gleaming under the suns. Their intent was clear: stop the wedding, break the bond, and crush the people's hope. "Stay here," Ethan shouted instinctively. Liara shook her head. "No, you stand with me." Ethan gritted his teeth. He didn't know how he was going to fight again, but the choice was already made. He wasn't running. Not this time. The attackers landed on the edges of the plaza, moving quickly toward the center. Ethan raised the alien staff weapon again, firing beams of light that struck the first wave of enemies. This time he aimed with purpose, taking a deep breath to steady his shaking hands. Each shot found its mark, pushing the attackers back. Liara was beside him, her blade flashing in arcs of pure energy. She moved with precision, cutting down any who dared approach too close. Together they became a striking figure, the princess and her sky-fallen groom, standing as one against the chaos. The citizens watched in awe, some joining in with makeshift weapons, throwing stones, or using energy devices to strike at the attackers. The defense became a symbol, not just of battle but of unity. Ethan realized something important. It didn't matter that he was human. What mattered was courage, resolve, and the willingness to stand when others might fall. One of the enemy leaders emerged, a towering figure in dark armor with twin blades glowing red. He charged directly at Liara. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He raised his staff and fired, but the leader deflected the beam with one blade, the force of the energy throwing Ethan backward. Liara's blade met the enemy's, sparks flying with every clash. She was struggling, but she fought with a determination that Ethan had never seen before. He scrambled to his feet, gripping the staff with both hands. "I've got this," he shouted, rushing to strike. The two of them attacked together, a perfect combination despite Ethan's inexperience. He fired, she struck, and together they pushed the enemy leader back. Finally, with a coordinated attack, Ethan struck the staff to the ground, releasing a burst of energy that staggered the enemy. Liara lunged, her blade slicing through the enemy's armor, and the figure collapsed. The remaining attackers hesitated, seeing the princess and the human standing side by side. Unbroken and unafraid, their confidence wavered. The crowd surged forward with renewed courage, and the enemies realized they could not win. They retreated, fleeing into the sky, their ships disappearing beyond the horizon. The plaza erupted in cheers. Ethan stood panting, blood pumping, heart racing. He had survived. He had fought. And somehow he had helped save the city and the wedding. Liara stepped beside him, her hand brushing against his. "You did well," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head, laughing breathlessly. "I nearly died. I can't believe I survived that." "You did more than survive," she replied. "You protected your people and mine. That is what matters." The priest stepped forward again, staff raised high. "Let the final bond be completed. The groom has proven himself worthy, not by prophecy, but by courage." Ethan took a deep breath and stepped forward with Liara. The crystal altar pulsed beneath their hands, energy weaving around them, connecting them in a light that was almost tangible. The crowd chanted, their voices rising in harmony, the sound filling every corner of the city. The priest's voice boomed. "By the courage of the unexpected, by the strength of the heart, by the unity of soul and mind, we declare this union complete." A burst of radiant light shot from the altar into the sky. The people cheered, waving their arms and banners. Ethan felt warmth spread through him, stronger than anything he had ever felt. It wasn't just energy from the altar, it was trust, hope, and a connection to everyone around him. Liara turned to him, her violet eyes shining. "The people believed in you, Ethan. I believed in you. And now we stand together, not because of destiny alone, but because we chose to." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the words sink in. He had never expected to feel such a bond, not with anyone, let alone with someone from a completely alien world. I choose to stand with you," he said. "Not because I have to, but because I want to." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then the bond is true." The crowd roared even louder, celebrating not just a wedding, but the courage and determination that had saved them all. The city's towers reflected the light, shining like stars reborn, and the streets filled with dancing, singing, and laughter. Ethan couldn't help but smile. He had gone from a pilot who crashed in the wrong place to someone who had become part of something bigger, someone who mattered to an entire civilization. The festivities continued long into the night. Ethan and Liara walked together, their hands brushing occasionally, sharing quiet words and laughter amidst the celebrations. They were no longer just a human and an alien princess. They were partners, equals, and symbols of hope. Later, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and stars filled the sky, Ethan found a quiet spot on the palace balcony. He looked out at the city, still alive with energy and joy, and thought about how far he had come. From a simple crash in space to a wedding that united two worlds, his life had changed forever. Liara joined him, standing silently at his side. Ethan looked at her. "You know, I never expected to be anyone's groom. And I especially didn't expect it to be on another planet." She laughed softly, Nor did I, but perhaps the universe has a strange sense of humor. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. Yeah, strange, but somehow right. They stood together, watching the stars, knowing that no matter what came next, they had faced chaos, danger, and uncertainty. And they had done it together. Ethan realized then that it didn't matter where he came from or how he arrived. What mattered was courage, choice, and the willingness to stand with others, even when everything seemed impossible. And as the city of the Zareth celebrated below, the human and the alien princess looked to the future, not bound by prophecy, but by trust, respect, and the bond they had chosen to share. The night air was cool, the stars shining above, and for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole felt truly at home. Not on any planet he had known, but in the place where he had made a difference. The wedding was over. The attack had been repelled. The bond had been sealed. And humanity, in the form of one confused but brave pilot, had proven that courage and heart could shape destinies even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. As Ethan stood beside Liara, he realized something else too. Life could change in an instant, and sometimes crashing into a strange place wasn't a mistake. It was an opportunity. The stars above twinkled, the city below hummed with life, and Ethan smiled. He had crashed into an alien wedding, and somehow he had become the groom, not by prophecy, not by destiny, by choice. And for the first time he felt like he truly belonged.